to this month's council meeting. If you don't mind standing for acknowledgement of country, diversity, commitment, service acknowledgement and prayer. City of Victor Harbor acknowledges the Wiradjuri and the Narrandjeri land and more acknowledge their deep connection. We pay our respects to elders past. Respect is extended to Aboriginal and
The City of Victor Harbor is committed to diversity, equity and inclusion. We respect people of all ages, abilities, genders, sexualities, religions, beliefs, cultures and backgrounds.
We recognise the brave individuals who have served and continue to serve our nation. We remember those who have lost their lives and paid the ultimate sacrifice to our country.
Somebody like to say the prayer.
Almighty God, we ask you to bless this council and allow it to be an agent of change to the people of this city and beyond. Direct and prosper its deliberations to the honouring of your name and the welfare of the people who it serves. Amen.
And please be seated. We have one apology, that is Councillor Henderson, and we have no items adjourned or laying on the table. So we go straight to the minutes of the previous meeting, and the recommendation is that they be confirmed as true and accurate. Moving that way, Councillor Schiller, thank you, and seconding that, please. Thank you very much, Councillor Quinton. Are there any questions about the minutes? Those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. The minutes of the special council meeting from the 7th of April. The recommendation is that they be confirmed as true and accurate. Somebody like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Burns. Seconding that, please. Councillor Kemp. Do anybody have any questions about those minutes? All those in favour? It's carried, thank you. We have one deputation that has been refused, and that was a deputation by Julie Mitchellmore. And the reason that that was refused was that it wasn't any matter related to that topic, wasn't related to council. The oversight and management of COVID-19 vaccinations and related public health issues fall under the jurisdiction of the South Australian Government and SA Health, not related to council. So I encouraged Mrs Mitchellmore to direct her concerns or any proposals that she might have to the Department of Health and Wellbeing, that's SA Health, or to her local state member, the Honourable David Basham, who could assist her further. So that was that one, and we do have one deputation tonight. And yes, Councillor Karemba.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I just had a question regarding that because I understand what you're saying, but Alexandrina had the deputation and actually formed a motion and voted on it. So what's the difference?
It's not a council-related matter. It's a matter relating under the jurisdiction of the South Australian Government, in particular SA Health.
Okay, so it's just not this council, because that council did it.
I can't tell you what that council did or didn't, or their reasoning behind it, but that is my reasoning.
Great, thanks.
We do have a deputation from Mr Sandercock, and that relates to item 12.3 on the agenda. So we'll go straight to that item afterwards. Mr Sandercock, if you would like to come up to the microphone at the back, and perhaps Councillor Kemp can show you how to turn the button to turn on and off. You'll have 10 minutes to give your deputation, and that includes question time as well, if there are any questions from the elected members.
Firstly, thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to make a presentation to the council tonight. in relation to the land disposal. My name's Mark Sanico, and my wife and I are owners of 6 Seacrest, which is the corner of Whalers Road. I'm the property owner that's referred to in the agenda as I put forward an email and a pricing matrix.
Sorry, Mr. Sandhook, can I just ask you to speak really directly into your microphone,
sorry.
because it's very difficult for people who are watching online to, just move it up to here. Thank you.
Okay, is that better?
Yep,
A lot
thank you
better.
very much.
All right. I would like to state publicly that we are in support of the possibility of acquiring the land adjoining our property, and we also fully supportive of the prior disposal to the land at number 17 Moonya. During the presentation, I'll be talking from a viewpoint of a potential purchaser. I'm not authorised to speak on behalf of the other residents, but will make general comments about discussions I've had with numerous people in the neighbourhood. I'll also say that there's a criteria-based sale pricing matrix that we'll refer to, but going forward, I'll say flexible pricing, or otherwise I get tongue-tied every time. The idea of the pricing model referred to was to provide an objective way of trying to get the sale process over the finish line as easy as possible, as well as providing a fairer pricing concept for all potential purchasers. My belief is that without the adoption of a flexible pricing model, I do believe you'll struggle to get all 17 owners on board to finally sign their cheques. That's the basis behind why I'm particularly challenging the recommendation point 2 on the agenda, being that the same square metre price will be applied to all purchase offers. This will also flow onto the overall income for the disposal of the land is recommended in point 3. Just going off script a little bit, the viewpoint from the purchaser, we really have varying parcels of land. Some are only 70 square metres, up to 210 square metres. The one at number 17 was for 320 square metres, so that was quite a sizable bit of land there. Some of the owners are keen to procure the land at the suggested rate. They have use for the land, so they can see a use for their land. Others have lodged an expression of interest to just be kept in the loop of the process and will decide once they know more. Some people are saying just leave it as a reserve. We like the fact that there's 12 metres of bushland between our properties. Others are saying I'm happy to have it added to my existing property, but not at the rate being offered. Why would I want to pay for land that I'm going to leave exactly like it is? Also, I need to take on responsibility for having an easement on that bit of land as well. I will also have to take on additional maintenance responsibility for that parcel of land that I might be acquiring as well. Some are even feeling as though they've been a bit pressured into buying the land. You can imagine there's on the high side and the low side, there's a 12-metre gap in the middle. If one person buys the land, it will actually go down and attach almost to the back door of the other property. So it's really only possible to really think you can go half and half between the adjoining properties. So based on that, I think the process has really focused on the sale of the land more so than from the purchaser's perspectives. So you've got 17 interested parties, they need to be considered. Looking at the specifics of the agenda, it was after talking to Leanne and Michelle during their site visit to view the land in March, it was supported that I put forward an email that could be considered as part of the decision-making process to determine a sale price for the land. That email was sent to Michelle on the 2nd of April and contained that flexible pricing matrix, which is included in the agenda item. So both the email and the pricing matrix are in the agenda for you to read. Referring to page 123 of the agenda, it's under a heading called Property Owner Proposal. I'd just like it noted that this section is mainly commentary by the report author and the feedback sought from the independent valuer. To see my wording, just please refer back to the emails because it has a slightly different slant on it. The flexible pricing concept was provided to council to be considered to enable this fairer pricing across all parties. I'll talk about the differences in the land shortly. The dot points in the email that put forward were just criteria that could be considered as an example. It wasn't the definitive list. And even discounted rates in the matrix, we just provided as examples of how the concept could be utilised and presented, and certainly not a definitive final proposal. As noted in the agenda, this concept was then forwarded to the independent valuer for their response, documented on the table on page 124. So if you could just turn to 124 at the moment, I'd just like to talk quickly about some of the valuer's responses in relation to that topic. It's really just trying to justify why I believe there's vast differences in the parcels of land being offered. I will refer back to 17 Fleurieu because that is always considered as being the baseline pricing reference that we're going to use because that's already been negotiated and sold. This is certainly not just a viewpoint from 6 Seacrest, it was across the entire parcel of land. So the criteria that I put forward was having SA water infrastructure on the parcel of land. So the parcel, the 6 metres that you're buying, some people will have mains water, some people will have sewer lines, other people will have no infrastructure at all. So whilst there's still an easement in existence, we are really talking about whether there is infrastructure there that you are very much restricted about what you can do around it. So that would justify why I believe there should be a pricing differential between those parcels of land. Not having direct road access from Whalers or Bluff Crescent. So the houses at the very end have access from those other roads to park a caravan. Whaler, 17 Fleurieu already have a shed. They're looking to replace their shed on that property. Up the other end, we've got water easements and wastewater easements. So we are really restricted to not even being able to level out the land to do that sort of stuff with, but we could probably park a caravan. So yes, we should be paying a higher price than the people in the middle that do not have any road access to that land. Is it within close proximity to the existing dwelling? So the land for sale, the bottom end on Fleurieu, the houses themselves are built right up against the edge of the reserve, and that's why they really have no option but to show an interest in buying that part of land, or they'll have people at their back door. From the Seacrest end, it's probably 30 metres away from the dwellings. So it's part of the land that we probably don't use much at all down the bottom at the moment, and we're getting an extra 6 metres of bushland that we'll be asked to buy. So once again, I see that those parcels of land are not really of equal value to the purchaser. Then the slope of the land, in the responses from the valuer, there's a topography map that shows that they're relatively even contours. Yes, over the 100-metre depth, they look even, but we're talking about a 6-metre parcel of land. In a couple of cases, they walk 2 metres, they'd fall off a 6-metre drop. So that parcel of land is really not of any real value to that purchaser. So looking at it from the purchaser side, I think that needs to be considered as well. So based on all of those, I see the need to have that flexible pricing model as a starting point to get the buyers seriously interested in procuring the land. I also put an extra point in the matrix, which the valuer didn't respond to, and this is around the fact of there is an existing easement over the entire property at the moment. There is a potential to get that easement removed from 5 properties only, where, including 17 Fleurieu, where they will then be able to replace their shed and build on an extension room if that's what they decide to do. They'll have no infrastructure within they're buying 9 metres, they'll have no infrastructure within another 1.5 metres outside of that. So SA Water are coming back to them saying it's purely a 3-metre easement is what will be required going forward, and that's not on their land. So it's totally easement free. If that's the case, then the pricing concept needs to be factored in to say, well, equivalent for what other people are buying, what's the discounts that they should maybe also be attracting?
You've only got 1 minute left.
Okay, that's very good. So in closing, I'm suggesting that the fairer, flexible pricing model should be considered in place of the one price suits all model. It's all about getting this sale process over the line. As I said, I'm keen to get it done. There's a few others keen to get it done, but I think you're going to find stumbling blocks without a pricing model that's more consistent. So that's why I'd be suggesting that the recommendation point 2 should be seriously considered.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We've probably got time for 1 or 2 quick questions. Councillor Kemp and then Councillor Karemba.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for that. You said about there's some properties that will get no value out of purchasing the land because they can't use it. Can you expand on that a bit further?
Yeah.
Because why would they buy it if they can't use it?
Well, that's probably the only reason they would buy it is to stop the person potentially down further buying up to their boundary. So, and they want to retain the fact that there is a reserve field between the properties and there's a lot of screening plants. So if they don't buy theirs, they've got no control over what might happen to that in the future. And if they can't access the land easily, well, they're probably not that interested in paying much for it.
Thank you. Councillor Corimbo?
Thank you. Seems like a bit of a meal, this whole thing. If that original property if we hadn't sold that land, no one would have been any wiser and that would have just stayed as a reserve?
I would say so, yes.
Okay. And do you know, just off by chance, what the block sizes are there?
The block sizes are probably 40 metres by 20, say 800 square metres, maybe 850 square metres, a lot
Right.
of them, some are bigger.
Okay, so by adding the extra land, does that then make them, and Director Padhouse might be able to answer this, does that then bring them into the availability of subdivision, minimum block size?
Director Padhouse isn't
Oh, it's
here.
not there? Oh, sorry, well, we won't be
Sorry.
answering that
Thank you.
question.
If you could refer your questions through the mayor.
Okay,
I'll actually ask perhaps Michelle is in the gallery. Would you be able to answer that, Michelle? Do you want to come up to the microphone? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, one property owner is waiting for after tonight, and then when we get the in-depth survey to find out the size of the property for that very reason, to see whether there is that option for subdivision. And that's the only one property owner, but I haven't taken much notice of the size of everybody's property, only the saleable
Okay.
land, the potential.
because that
saleable
changes
land.
everything, right? Because once you get into availability of subdivision, that land becomes a lot. And you may not want to subdivide, but you may not have the property
So
forever.
we could already, we got 1,500 square metres.
Okay, so you could subdivide. What I'm saying is that if we do this, then potentially this is a thing, so the land is worth more. Yeah, I don't know, the whole thing is.
Any other questions, Councillor
No,
Corimbo?
that's fine.
Thank you.
I'll talk about it when.
I can take one more question. No, thank you very much for that. And what we'll do is, and thank you very much, Michelle, as well. What we'll do now is move on to item 12.3, and we can discuss that. Thank you for your deputation and time. So if we go to 12.3, the first recommendation is that council endorse the disposal of the land known as Lot A, Bluff Crescent, to be sold to the adjoining private property owners of Seacrest and Munya Avenue to be merged into the existing properties. Moving that way, Councillor Kemp.
Mayor Jenkins, I'd like to move another motion first to see if it will get up. And that's the recommendation 4.A of the recommendations. And the reasons why I prefer to have that one move first, because I'll read it out. The Chief Executive Officer be authorised to negotiate with each property owner, and if enough interest is obtained as not to landlock any portion of the subject land, do all things necessary to complete the land disposal. The reason why I want to move that first, because I think before we start putting money towards this and doing it, we should need to get a commitment up front from the landowners, the 17 of them first, before we actually start committing money and processes in place. So that's why I prefer to see this recommendation put forward first.
All right, I'll see if you've got a seconder for it, and if you do get a seconder, thank you, Councillor Burns. I'll just ask the CEO whether there's any procedural issues in terms of going to item 4 first, or there's any issues with that without addressing the items beforehand.
Sorry, through the mayor. It's my understanding we've already undertaken some consultation with the residents to ascertain their interest, and that's what you're actually doing there. So that would be 4A is more around finalising those negotiations. I understand what you're trying to achieve, and I'm just wondering whether, we've already done a fair bit of that work. I mean, if council's not made the decision to actually dispose of the land, then I'm really just having a general conversation with each of the property holders.
Again, all the discussions up to date, as my understanding, is that's an expression of interest that they may be interested in looking at. It's not, I haven't made a confirmed commitment yet. So before we actually go down the path of allocating funds to do certain things, I think we should get a commitment from the property owners before we do anything else.
Well, we also need the survey to actually ascertain which the portions of land and how they'd be allocated as well. So it's sort of the chicken and egg scenario, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I do understand what you're trying to achieve, though. I'm
But
just,
I think if you have another negotiation with them and say, look, we need a commitment, yes or no, because if only one person doesn't commit, then the whole process may not go ahead anyway, because you don't want a landlocked piece of land in the middle.
and then on what terms would I be looking to negotiate, sorry, through the mayor, to continue that discussion? Because I'd obviously need some guidance from council as to what sort of rate you were looking to negotiate.
Well, I would have thought that you've already got some parameters to work to, you know, either you got the $100 per square metre or what the Mark put up as to what could be a negotiation. So it's a negotiation between those figures, I would have thought would have been a good parameter to work with.
Councillor Burns, do you want to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. I totally understand where Councillor Kemp's coming from. I wanted to actually hear his perspective. It was interesting that the CEO has said there has been a number of discussions. I get the impression that a lot of people are really just waiting to see what the price is going to be before they commit. And I think we need to be able to give the CEO some firmer range or price range so she can have discussions. And I quite like the purchasing, flexible purchasing model option rather than a fixed rate. But I'm also concerned that if some people agree and some don't, you're going to have parcels of land. So it either has to be, everyone has to do it, or you know, what if you get 3 or 4 and the rest don't? And if someone subdivides, then how are they going to have access to that land? Depends on the subdivision. But
Thank you.
I think it's just getting messy where we need to give guidance to the CEO to, we either need to say, yes, we're going to release the land and it all has to be sold. You can't just buy 1 or 2, and give the CEO some direction as to what pricing she can discuss with them.
Yeah, I think that they're worthy recommendations of good debate. I'm concerned that they're coming after the other recommendations rather than at the end where we're working through the issues. But Councillor Karamba, you want to speak, and then Councillor Schiller.
Thank you, Mayor. This to me sort of has the hallmarks of one of those decisions that future councils ask, what were they thinking? We've got a situation where if potentially there's going to be land locked, who currently has to look after that reserve? Is that council? Council looks after it? Right. So if say, for example, we've already sold one end block, we sell the other and we close it off, how is that serviced?
Through the easement, Councillor Karamba.
Yeah, but what, do you jump someone's fence or how do you get access?
Jody, can you answer that one for me?
I'm just thinking of an area that might be landlocked. So how would you, or is that a requirement of owning those parcels of land?
Through the mayor, the original negotiations were to retain a 3-metre easement so that we could gain access
So-
through there.
So you always be able-
Because SA Water would need to access there if they need to do any maintenance on their infrastructure as well.
so someone has to have an area, or all properties have to have an availability for that.
There's an easement over the whole land.
Yeah.
But a 3-metre wide easement, I think, on the Crescent end. Is that
Yeah.
right, Michelle? Yeah, for access.
Yeah. Okay. So there has to be an easement. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Schiller.
I'd like to move an adjournment to take it to the next meeting and to slot it into a workshop prior to that coming back to council. I think it's good that we could go out there and have a look at it ourselves and then bring it back again.
I have a formal motion for an adjournment. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Karamba. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. So we now move on to questions from the gallery. And we have 2 questions from Council Watch. I think Mr. Andrews You're going to ask them?
Thank you, Mayor. The question from the gallery is this: to the Mayor, Councillors and Chief Executive Officer, the City of Victor Harbor Council holds ultimate responsibility for planning, future development and the protection of heritage assets within its jurisdiction. Council Watch Fleurieu raises the following issues of community concerns regarding or relating to the ongoing development of work at the Mount Brecon estate. We draw the attention of Council to the Mount Brecon estate regarding the environmental and health risks associated with ongoing works at the site. The questions in particular are: 1, residents have reported the presence of asbestos containing material on site with visible dust blowing onto neighbouring properties, in particular their roofs, during windy conditions. There is particular concern about this dust settling on rooftops, raising serious public health and contamination concerns for those living in
Mr.
close.
Andrews, can you please ask your question?
This is the question.
It's
In
very different from the questions that I've written down that you've submitted. This sounds like a preamble to me. But
Well,
carry on
I'm
with your
sorry,
question.
if you want to carry on, I'm quite happy to put the significance, and I just almost finished that off, contamination concern for those living in close proximity. Significant 2, the access obstruction and damage to heritage infrastructure. Significant
Mr. Andrews, can you please ask your question?
I am.
You're giving me a long preamble. The question that I've got that you submitted.
That's the concern we have.
Mr. Andrews, the question that I have that you submitted was, will the council arrange for an urgent on-site inspection of the Mount Brecon estate involving the Director of Planning, senior planning staff, Mayor Moira Jenkins, CEO Victoria McCurdy and councillors to assess the situation firsthand and engage directly with the affected residents? Is that the same question that you have written down?
Well, that is the end of it. But yes, I'll agree with you. What steps will council take to ensure full compliance with environmental planning and heritage regulations, particularly when public health, property access and heritage structures may be compromised?
Yep, that's the second question that I have
Okay.
down there.
Well,
Would you like me
then-
to answer the first one?
Yes.
So the response to the first one, and I'll read the first one again for you. Will the council arrange for an urgent on-site inspection of the Mount Brecon estate involving the Director of Planning, senior planning staff, Mayor Moira Jenkins, CEO Victoria McCurdy and councillors to assess the situation firsthand and engage directly with affected residents? The response is that council has received reports of dust and a potential presence of asbestos containing material on site. The team leader of public safety and compliance has inspected the site and confirmed that dust suppression measures such as regular watering and sprinklers are in place and are ongoing. Residents are encouraged to report any specific concerns directly to council for investigation. While a meeting to the extent of suggested, as you suggested, is not considered necessary at this stage, residents are welcome to request a meeting to discuss their concerns with relevant staff in more detail. In relation to your second question of what steps will council take to ensure full compliance with environmental planning and heritage regulations, particularly where public health, property access and heritage structures may have been compromised, the response is council's authorised officers are committed to administering compliance in accordance with council's enforcement policy and the legislation under which they are authorised to act upon. Where any concerns are raised, council undertake investigation to determine an appropriate course of action. This may include site inspections, consultation or referral to relevant authorities where required, and the use of enforcement powers in accordance with our enforcement policy where non-compliance is identified. We encourage residents to report specific issues so that they can be investigated and addressed accordingly. Thank you very much for your questions.
Thank you. I shall show this to everyone.
I'm sorry, Mr. Andrews, if you'd like to take a seat back in the gallery, if you want to wait, if you want to wait until the end of the meeting, you're more than happy to pass those around. We now go to petitions, of which there are none. And so we now go to outstanding resolutions 9.1. The recommendation is that council receive and note the outstanding resolutions report. If someone would like to move that way. Thank you very much, Councillor Mann. And do I have a seconder for that? Thank you very much. I've just got a mental blank. Councillor Mackenzie. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions, or do you two want to speak? Have any questions about the outstanding resolutions? Any questions from the rest of the team? Councillor Schiller.
I think it's item number 28, which is relating to the review of the footpath policy that's been put through council, and also for the Disability Advisory Committee. Just would like to direct it towards Director Jodie Roberts as to how that's progressing and whether it's been allocated to anyone at this point.
Jodie, can you respond to that, please?
Thank you, through the Mayor. Our governance team have done an initial review, and I'm very happy to say that we have a new manager of city infrastructure who started with us today. Mark is in the gallery, and he's already been tasked with that.
Thank you very much.
Nice to see you, Mark. Put a face to the name. Welcome. Does anybody have any other questions in relation to the outstanding resolutions for April? No, in that case, then I'll put that recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. The Mayoral Monthly Report, the January to March report, the recommendation is to receive and note that. Do I have someone to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Schofield, and seconding Councillor Burns. Does anybody have any questions? All those in favour? Those against? Thank you. That's carried. We now move to the Encounter Bay Recreation Grounds Planning Group Council member nomination. The recommendation is twofold. We receive and note the nomination from Councillor Burns. Thank you, Councillor Burns, for the council member representation position. And the second recommendation is to appoint Councillor Burns. I'll take that on block. Moving that, Councillor Schofield. Thank you. And seconding that, Councillor Mackenzie. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Congratulations, Councillor Burns. The Local Government Association Ordinary General Meeting, 9.4. The recommendations are, what I'll do is I'll ask if anybody wants to pull out any of those recommendations to look at separately. Otherwise, I'll ask for them to be supported on block. So you're happy to support on block, Councillor Burns? Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Mann.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, no, whether we had pulled out the first one that we put up to start with around the exemption for stamp duty for first home purchases for existing properties, based on the response we've already received from the government to our submission. But you know, if they're not going to, I guess, listen to an individual council, hopefully the collective local government may be able to sway them towards the importance of this. But all we can do is keep advocating and hope that they listen. So yeah, happy to support this.
Absolutely, and I know that it was something that when I took it to the board of the local government, that they were keen to support it. So if we have LGA advocacy there, then that'd be great. Any further discussion? I'll put this to the floor then. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Feedback 9.5 is feedback to the Local Government Association strategic plan, and the recommendation is that council submit feedback as provided at attachment 2. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, councillor Schiller. And do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, councillor Mann. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp?
Just a question, because we're talking about we're going to be supporting this plan, but under the plan I read that on page 53, which is under pillar 2, magnified member value, there's a statement in there about enterprise bargaining agreements, and our council is supporting the continued opt-in shared enterprise bargaining agreement process. I thought we were hoping to go back to awards system instead of getting a joint LGA doing a negotiation on behalf of all council, because one of the things I do have a fear of is that smaller councils may not afford the pay rises that the LGA may get if they get the permission to go down this pathway to be the sort of shared enterprise bargaining process. So I don't support that part of it, because I think that smaller councils could be ended up with a big a salary bill, which normally wouldn't happen under a award system or individual enterprise bargaining.
One of the, this was discussed at the directors meeting when we were talking about the strategic plan. One of the difficulties that some of the smaller councils have is that they don't necessarily have the professional ability or the ability to do the enterprise bargaining, and they have to pay extra for people to come in and help them with it. They don't have the expertise, I should say. And so the LGA doing some of that on behalf of councils, they certainly would take into account some of those issues that you're raising. I just asked the CEO if she wants to add anything to that.
If I may, through the mayor, I actually think it's a step in the right direction, because to have the award to actually remove enterprise agreements altogether is a far harder exercise than actually opting in. It's an opt-in, so the councils don't have to participate, but it's actually far better to have a collaborative approach. And then I think if the state government sees that you've got more councils trying to actually work together to give an even keel in terms of wage increases that are reflective of the sector as opposed to the size of the council, then it's going to be easier to achieve. So I actually think this is a step in the right direction, but there is the ability to opt in or opt out depending on the councils wanting to be involved.
Are there any further questions or any further discussion on this item? I'll now put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 9.6 is the Australian Coastal Councils Association Conference. The recommendation, and unfortunately Councillor Henderson is not here, but the recommendation is to approve Councillor Henderson to attend the 2025 Coastal Councils Forum, and that if she does go, that she tables a written report to a subsequent council meeting in relation to that. Moving that way, Councillor Schofield. Thank you. And do I have a seconder for that? Thank you very much, Councillor McKenzie. Do you want to speak to that, Carol?
Excuse me, yes, I will. The thing is that there are only 2 representatives coming from South Australia, and one is Councillor Henderson. As we speak, she's in Adelaide and being accepted into the by the Deputy Premier, so she's being appointed to her position. Within this particular group, they only have one face-to-face meeting per year, and that's this one. And I believe it is extremely important that when we have events like this, that we are represented. Now, the thing is, Councillor Henderson is not only representing us, she's representing the state, which is a huge honour to her. But it gives us, and those that attend these sorts of conferences understand the importance of being there amongst your other counterparts across Australia to talk about issues and find out a lot of information. to me, the most important thing is face to face. We tend to be losing that, and you learn a lot more by talking to somebody than picking up a phone or watching somebody talking on if you're doing a Teams. So I recommend that we actually support this. And I think we also need to congratulate Councillor Henderson on her achievement.
Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Councillor Mackenzie, do you want to speak to this? No. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Karemba.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question to start with. How long does the forum, is it a forum or what is it? Yeah, forum. How many days does it go for? Is that 2 days, is it?
2
Okay.
days.
I have no issue with Councillor Henderson going. I've just sat in an audit risk committee meeting where it was quite robust debate about, starting to tighten the belt. And like I said, I've got no issue with her going. But I just think that, there's a lot of things that we do in this council we don't get paid for. And I think she should self-fund. Like I said, no issue with it going, but I think we need to start sending a message to the community that, because we're looking at a 6% rate increase. To me, it's just not a good look. I don't know what other elected members think, but that's just my interpretation of it. And like I said, no issue with her going, but I think she can cover her own costs.
Just in relation to your concerns, Councillor Karemba, there are sufficient funds in the budget for this year for Councillor Henderson to attend, so it won't be affecting the rates or next year's budget.
Thank you, Mayor. It still does send a different message, like we've allocated money, but I just think we need to start cutting back, but that's just my opinion.
Is there any further discussion? Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. In reading this, I thought it was a worthy conference to attend, and I'm pleased that an elected member of Victor Harbor is able to go. The only concern I have is that, as Councillor Karemba has said, when I've attended different functions at Murray Bridge and so forth and haven't claimed any money because I believe I get paid an allowance and that's my cost. So I would have no problem at all in using $1,000 of the training fund, but I think the $400 difference should be really contributed by, as I would, if I was going. So I think there should be.
I don't think she's asking to be paid for her time there. She's
No,
been
I
asking to
understand
be
that.
paid for her airfare reimbursed and accommodation reimbursed.
Yeah, I understand that.
There any further discussion? If not, I'll pop it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move to 9.7, which is the reviewed code of practice for meeting procedures. We have had another workshop on that, and I think the only thing that came from that workshop was to limit the time that people speak prior to asking questions from the gallery to half a minute before their questions get given, and there weren't any other changes. We do need to have 2/3 of members support the reviewed code of practice for it to go ahead. So the recommendation is that council adopt the review code of practice for meeting procedures as provided by the separate cover. Can I have someone to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Schiller, and seconding that, please. Thank you, Councillor Quinton. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Schiller?
Just that we've had the opportunity to put our opinions across, so I think we need to move it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Quinton. No. Does anybody want to speak to this? Councillor Karemba.
Just a question. So you're saying the only change is minimising the amount of time that people can talk when they ask a question?
That was the
Okay.
my recollection is that that's the change that the council, most of the members thought was a good idea.
Yeah.
When we did the workshop.
Yeah, I wasn't in favour of that. I think we need to speak less and hear more of our community, not less. So I won't be supporting this.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? All those in favour? 2, 3, 6. And those against? 2, 6-2, is that's 2/3? Yep, that's carried, thank
A
you.
full division, please.
Those in favour? Councillor Mann, Councillor Quinton, Councillor Kemp, Councillor Schiller, Councillor Mackenzie, and Councillor Schofield. And those against, Councillor Burns and Councillor Karemba. That has been carried. Nine point 8 is the Fleurieu Aquatic Centre 2025-26 budget. This was endorsed last night by Alexandrina Council. I'm sorry, I can hear talking from the gallery. Mr. Andrews? I can hear you. Yes, I can. I'd like you to be quiet. The recommendation is that council, subjected to Alexandrina Council, which has resolved the same, endorse an updated Fleurieu Aquatic Centre fees and charges as presented in the report. And I'll let you read the other B, C and D parts of the recommendation. Can I have a mover for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Schiller. And seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Do either of you want to speak to this? Councillor Schiller, Councillor Kemp? Thank you.
Just a question to the CEO, because she's the author of this report. There's throughout the document, it refers to a joint venture committee, the advisory committee, the joint venture advisory committee. Just wondering which one it is, because it's nice to know how to address to it.
It's a joint venture committee, and it actually was prepared by Alexandrina Council, and we are presenting the same report. So I apologise that it wasn't consistent. I'll make sure it is consistent.
Thank you. On page 70 of the agenda item, it talks about the combined YMCA proposal to the total cost of operating the centre, excluding depreciation and council contributions, a deficit of 910,400, but that's a reduction of 61,300. So that's a good news story in that respect. But again, I'm still concerned about the cost to the community, both Alexandrina and Victor Harbor, that, you know, it's getting out to 1.8 million now, where the Prudential report originally said that by year 5 of the operating of the centre, it'd be down to $240,000. Would be the express between the both councils will have to pay up. So I'm hoping this new joint venture committee will certainly start bringing down some improvements in our expenditure. It is a great centre. It certainly does well for our community and the people of Alexandrina as well. But again, we've got to weigh up the pros and cons of the cost to benefits. And I think that if we can get the costs down, I think there'll be a much greater benefit.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Karemba.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to note that, like I said before, we're proposing a 6% rate increase, but I'm looking at the increase in cost and nowhere near 6% across the board as an increase. Once again, I spoke about council messaging, and while I am happy for those people that use the centre, I think, you know, we should have, I'm not sure how much input both councils had or how these figures came to be, but yeah, just to me, it seems like, you know, we're going to rate potentially around our community 6%, but the users aren't going to feel the same level of pain. So just wanted that noted. Thanks.
Are there any further discussions? In that case, I will put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move to 10.1, which is the Urban Growth Management Strategy. I'm happy to do that recommendation on block.
I prefer them to be individual.
Individual, sure. So the first one is that council receive and note the engagement summary report as prepared by Future Urban. Moving that way, Councillor Burns, and seconding Councillor Schiller. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does
Thank you. Other than it was a very interesting feedback report to read.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to speak to that? Councillor Quinton.
Just wanted to make some commentary around it. been mulling it over at the long weekend and thinking about some points that we may like to sort of include but before we formally submit it. And that's basically around sort of looking at if there's some way that we can, as a council, have an input into the number of these community living arrangements that are being built in the city of Victor Harbor. Because looking through the objectives of it in terms of meeting the needs of the community and the service and infrastructure, social infrastructure, particularly demands. In the current update, there doesn't seem to be anything really that aligns that way. Is there scope to sort of put in some feedback around it in terms of trying to minimise the number of retirement sort of setups we get? Because I do feel like they are starting to, there's a lot of them, and they're going to be a lot of impacts on the community in terms of being able to service the community properly.
I'll direct that through to the CEO, if you can respond.
If I can, through the Mayor, just noting the first recommendations about receiving the first lot of consultation that is back. And this is not about submitting this to anyone as yet. This is still working and engaging with our community on our urban growth management strategy, speaking into that of the state government's Greater Adelaide plan. And I am aware that Councillor Mann has similar views to you and is looking to incorporate something along those lines. So I'd say it's probably, you will have the opportunity now is the time to look at what other lenses you wish to provide or incorporate in that consultation. So we make sure that that is quite clear from an advocacy perspective from this council. You haven't got the capacity to change legislation that's part of that residential living components, but you do have a strong ability to advocate to what you want to see happen in this community in terms of that growth. Councillor Mann.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, no, shared very similar thoughts over the weekend, Councillor Quinton, and if you wait, I've got an alternative fourth point to put up when we reach it.
Any further discussion on point 1? I'll put that to the vote then. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Point 2, recommendation, the council approve the urban growth management strategy draft, and this is for consultation, so it will come back to be finalised for the purpose of commencing the third phase of community and stakeholder engagement in accordance with the strategy. Does someone move that way? Thank you, Councillor Kemp. And seconding that, please, Councillor Burns. Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp, Councillor Karemba.
Yes, I think it's good that we're going to a third public consultation on this, because it is certainly a very strategic document that we need to look at the next 30 years on how we grow as a community with housing and also industrial, or what they call employment zones. I'm afraid we're governed by two factors. One is the state government will tell us what we can and can't do, because that's what the Greater Adelaide Regional Plan is. And secondly, the market will determine what gets built here, because people want to come down and live here because it's a fantastic place to live. It's a great slogan we could use on there. So I think in that respect, I think, if we get enough response from the public about, what Councillor Quinton, Councillor Mann are saying, I think that'd be a great leverage that we could put into our arguments in our final report to go to government. But certainly, as I said, we are dictated by two powers which is out of our control.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Kremper, you wanted to speak.
Thank you, man. I only had a brief look at the report. So this is the one we're going to be sending out to the community for consultation.
This will be the third part of the community consultation.
Yeah. I remember speaking about the Jolly Land and not having on in our report as being future employment zone. Has that been changed? Did we?
So that was obviously taken on board, and then within it we have to acknowledge the Greater Adelaide plan, because this is what we've done. We've actually incorporated what the aspirations or the decision of the state government has been.
Yeah.
We were very clear in our submissions that we didn't support that, and what we've said, we acknowledge that that's the state government's future vision. but our projections are around extending the Lincoln Park land and other employment lands. So, and that's what this document will do moving forward, is that the state government's Greater Adelaide Plan is a digital document, which we anticipate hopefully this UGMS will provide an overlay, and maybe they'll make adjustments, but we need to be evidence-based, which we are. So we do have to acknowledge it, but we're not saying that that's our priority. We're saying the employment land should be in somewhere more appropriate, which is more around extension of Lincoln Park and other sites.
Okay, and that's displayed in this.
Yep.
Wonderful, thank you.
Councillor Burns, sorry, I
you,
didn't
mate.
ask you to speak.
That's
as
okay.
seconder.
It's what, just for clarification, my understanding is that after recommendation 4 is sort of gone out for consultation, comes back, we still have the opportunity for amendments, as Councillor Mann and Quinton said, at that time, and any other input we wish to add in. But I think it's probably a bit late. You know, we've got to send out what we have. Doesn't mean that we can't keep working.
Correct.
Absolutely. Councillor Mann.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I guess firstly, I'd just like to, state that with the UGMS, it's such a significant project for Victor Harbor, and I appreciate lots of work has gone into it. And I guess I really want to commend the administration and the consultants for the work they've done. That work also helped inform those detailed sort of submissions that we put up for the Greater Adelaide Regional Plan. And as a result, got a better result because of that detailed submission. So I really want to commend the work that's gone into it. It's coming along very well. However, I'm not sure that it does enough, as discussed, to outline and advocate for more affordable housing aimed at a younger demographic. There is a lot of concern and fear in our community around Victor's future growth, and our community should be fearful. I'm incredibly worried by it, but my worry isn't so much about the fact that we will grow, but more about what our growth will comprise. The state government's Greater Adelaide Regional Plan wants Victor Harbor to have 12,000 new dwellings by 2051. We currently have an average of 2.1 people per household. So add 12,000 new dwellings to our town with an average of just over 2 people in each, and that's over 25,000 new residents. You hear time and time again people say we don't want to be another Mount Barker. This is because Mount Barker, where a town that grew too quickly to accommodate its physical and social infrastructure. But there's a real risk that Victor Harbor could become much worse than Mount Barker. This is because Mount Barker's average age is 37, whereas Victor Harbor's average age is 60. Our community is acutely aware of how thinly stretched our medical, health and care services currently are. I'm sure we've all heard of residents waiting a month to see their regular doctor, or medical centres not taking on new patients, forcing our residents to travel to Adelaide for an appointment. Now imagine how much worse this situation will be with up to 25,000 more residents. If we don't take serious action to change our trajectory, it's likely that most of the growth will be made up of elderly residents who generally require more care, health and medical treatment. If our social infrastructure is already at its limits in keeping up with needs of our elderly population, how will our town survive in the future? We need a larger, younger workforce to support and care for our elderly and ageing population. The UGMS outlines where future commercial and industrial areas may be, but who's going to work in those shops or provide the services? Is part of the reason that our main street is full of op shops, because in many of them, the workforce is comprised of older retirees who are volunteering their time. How will our businesses cope when there just isn't the local workforce to sustain them? You don't hear this much in 2025, but I'm really worried for our local baby boomers and Gen Xers. They've been diligently serving our local community for decade after decade, but once they reach retirement and an age when they need support and care—
1 minute, Mr. Mann.
Thank you. They won't be able to find any locally. I hate driving to Adelaide, and I'm sure our current and future elderly residents also hate having to drive to Adelaide for anything and everything, because we don't have the workforce down here. Some food for thought, but during COVID-19, for the safety and benefit of our community, we run an anti-tourism campaign. Do we need to consider an anti-retirement one now? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. I'm not sure I fancy standing up and telling older people not to come to Victor Harbor. I'll be certainly hung, drawn and quartered for that one.
Might have to.
Any further discussion on point 2? No? Oh, yes. Mr. Quinton?
Given light to discussion, I would like to move that we amend this recommendation 2E, 3 and 4 going forward. I feel like there's no point sending this document out for more consultation if it's not what we want it to be yet. And I'd rather just get it right and then get it out for consultation personally.
You want to amend or adjourn?
Adjourn, sorry.
Adjourn?
Yeah.
Do I have a seconder for that adjournment? Councillor Burns? All those in favour? 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'm doing the casting vote. It sounds like from the discussion that there's a number of things that as an elected body you want to put into the UGMs to go out for the community to comment on. And so I'd be in favour of amending this till the next council meeting. It is, and then discussing it again at the next council meeting, but including those comments in relation to both. We've already got the comments in around the industrial area coming into Victor Harbor, but including those comments about the importance of having our demographics much more balanced and addressing the need for younger people to come into the community. So my casting vote is that I'll support that. So that's moved on the casting vote. Councillor Karimpa, you had a question? We've finished
Yeah,
with
I'm
this
just
now.
wondering whether we should at some point have a workshop to actually work out how we're going to implement these things that we're trying to do, because otherwise it's just emails, and I think we need to really sit down, and because there probably would be some requirement for legislative changes and how we would actually go about doing that.
Yeah, we won't be able to do any legislative changes ourselves. We've had a number of workshops about it, and I think this amendment is really looking at including those issues that have been put in. Whether or not we can have another workshop, I'll ask the CEO to respond to that, because if it's needed, I'm sure that we can slot one in somewhere.
My understanding from the adjournment was to enable a workshop to actually enable further incorporation, because there's no other way I can do it. It can't be done via exchange of emails, so it needs another workshop, and that was my understanding of the adjournment motion. Otherwise, there's no purpose of it.
It's fine. So we now move on to 10.2. I have a material conflict of interest in relation to this item, being chair of the Encounter Community Centre. And so I will ask Councillor Schiller, the Deputy Mayor, to come up and take this.
Thank you all. I'll just get Victoria to read out the correct naming of 10.2. So we've got the exact wording of the item number.
Sorry, I just also needed to declare a general conflict of interest. Just as the business where I work has done work for the centre before, however, it was not funded by council and isn't ongoing, so I will remain in the chamber and vote.
Thank you.
So item 10.2, the Encounter Centre Collaboration and Grant Acquittal Report.
All right. We will do this with the first recommendation being put up first. And I would ask that anyone that's moving or seconding or wanting to speak, if they could announce that to me, and then be polite, and I will get to you as we go around. So do we have a mover for the first recommendation?
Councillor Burns.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
Councillor Kemp.
Thank you. Councillor Burns, would you like to speak to that?
No, I've read through everything. It's good progress.
Councillor Kemp?
No, thank you.
Okay, anyone else like to speak to the recommendation? If not, all those in favour, please raise your hand. And I'll ask Victoria to let me know.
All are in favour.
Fantastic. All right, now we're on to recommendation 2, and it is reasonably long recommendation. So
Councillor Burns.
you'd like to move the recommendation?
Sorry, move a deferment of recommendation 2 to the next council meeting, and that we A, B and C, I think we should actually do first and attend and discuss. That'll actually help us with recommendation, the first part, where we're going to vote on the funding agreement.
Just to clarify,
Yeah.
the recommendation actually says that we are considering it. We are not actually voting on locking this into the budget currently. So it's just allowing consideration, and considering we are looking at our financial plan and budget, we really need to sort of have a bit of an idea whether we're going to be looking at some of the things that are coming up tonight, whether they may well be put into the budget. So
That's fine. I'll withdraw that it's only a consideration and we get to do the other 3 items. That's fine.
anyone like to move the motion?
Councillor Mann.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for the motion, please?
Councillor Corimba.
Thank you. Braden Mann, would you like to speak to
No.
the motion?
No, thank you.
Councillor Corimba?
Thank you, Angela. I'd just question or query, consider, so that will actually show up as a figure in our documentation, or are we just considering it right now?
If I may, through the Deputy Mayor. So we, as a result of the Audit and Risk Committee that we've had today, we've actually have another workshop on Wednesday with council members to discuss the feedback we received from the Audit and Risk Committee and any further considerations in regards to the draft budget prior to it potentially coming back to a special council meeting for adoption for the purposes of public consultation. So if this motion is supported, my intent would be that you get to actually have a discussion about it on Wednesday. But there's no decision to actually include it or not until the adoption of the budget by way, which will be at a special council meeting.
Okay.
And that's only for the purposes of public consultation.
Great, thank you.
Do we have anyone to speak to the motion?
Councillor Kemp.
Thank you.
I'm not in support of this. I think that we've already given the Encounter Community Centre $60,000, and it's by their reports, they're certainly increasing their productions in the way of toy factory, garden nursery, room hire and programs and workshops. So the 60,000 up front in the first year has done a good job by actually getting them moving in the right direction. So I think continuing to even consider it another 60,000 and then possibly another 60,000 after that. So I prefer them to let them see how they go for another 12 months and then come back if they're struggling, because we have other community centres in the city which are not getting the same funding as they are, and they are council-owned community centres. Carrigalinga House and the old school building is not owned by us, but we do rent it. But they are all there for our community and they are used quite regularly. So I think that the first 60,000 was sufficient at this stage.
Any further comments from anyone?
Councillor Mann, if in closing, if that's all right.
All right, we'll go with Councillor Mann.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. You know, I'm happy to support this, to consider it. I think I appreciate Councillor Kemp's points, and as part of that, looking at this consideration and meeting with the board, we could probably also look at the differences between those quoted sort of community facilities and what they offer, and just helping to weigh up this investment as we look at our budget. So I'm happy to support it at this stage.
Thank you. We will now put this to the vote. So all those in favour, please raise your hand. Victoria, if you can.
You've got Councillor Mann, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Burns, Councillor Corimba, Councillor Quinton and Councillor Schofield in favour.
Thank you. And those against?
Councillor Kemp.
Thank you. That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Angela. We now move to 10.3, which is the Regional Development Australia Funding Agreement. I'm happy to do that recommendation. It's one recommendation in three pieces. If somebody would like to move the recommendation as read, Councillor Kemp moving that way and seconding that, please. Thank you very much, Councillor Quinton. Do either of you want to speak to it? Councillor Quinton?
Just to note that this strategic sort of alliance was really helpful in getting the study hub over the line. So it'd be good to have on board for future aspirations.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to this? I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. .1 is the capital project update for the third quarter, and the recommendation is receiving and noting the update. If somebody would like to move that way. Thank you, Councillor Schiller. And seconding that, please. Thank you, Councillor Mann. Do either of you want to speak to it? Councillor Mann? Does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. It was a good report. The only concern I have is further delays on the fire safety work on the cinema, and that was my only concern. I understand what's holding up a lot of the other work, but I think we actually have a fire and safety issue that needs to be addressed urgently rather than roll into the next financial year. That's all.
Jodie, do you want to respond to that?
Thank you, through the Mayor. The contractor has been engaged in detail. They're doing some final detailed design for the building rules approval. So it's my understanding that that's planned to happen in, I think it's in the next few weeks, where it's going to be less impact on the cinema. I understand that. I'd have to get the exact dates and we can provide that to council members in a council member update, but the contractor has been engaged and the plan was not to do it during the school holidays. So it was planned to be done when it's less impact on the cinema.
Okay. Thank you.
Victoria, you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm sorry, just Councillor Burns, it may be that you're reading the Arts and Cultural Precinct, that 1.3. The reference in there is that project has been delayed because of the fire safety work that needed to be incorporated into those designs. So that money is around the detailed design for the whole precinct, but the fire safety works is going ahead this financial year.
It just wasn't.
Yeah,
clear.
no, I can understand where you were coming from. So.
That's fine. And understand that it's being delayed. That's not an issue.
There any more discussion points? Councillor Kemp?
Just a question, please. Through the CEO, the Gantt chart, is that available online? Because it's not in the updated information here. I can't find it. So if I can get it online, it'd be great.
Yeah, we have popped it in the members teams channel. I'll just put another link, an email, so where it is,
All
that
right.
it is there.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? In that case, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Port Elliot Road Footpath, capital budget amendment. The recommendation as read. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, councillor Schiller, and seconding councillor Burns. Do either of you want to speak to that? Sorry,
Only,
councillor Schiller first.
sorry.
I think this is just a small move of funds across to accomplish a better result, and any improvement to our footpaths is a great thing to do.
Thank you. Councillor Burns.
I always like to see a project being funded by surplus out of another project rather than asking for extra money. So very good.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Kemp.
Just a question again on transferring the money. Will the other project where you're transferring the money from be impeded or impacted by transferring $14,000 out?
Jodie, I'll ask you to respond to that one.
Thank you, through the Mayor. The footpath replacement program, we had planned to spend some money on upgrading the existing footpath on Port Elliot Road that was pavers, which can create a trip hazard. So it's just going to limit the amount of work we can do by that value.
Sorry, I'll ask the question. I didn't think quite you answered it. The transferring of the money from one item to another, would that impact the item that you're transferring the money from, that you're going to run out of money?
Thank you, through the Mayor. The money's coming from the footpath replacement program, which is renewal of existing footpaths, and the assigned work that we were going to do with this money is on Port Elliot Road footpath, where we've got existing pavers and we're changing them over to concrete footpath. So what it's doing is limiting the extent of that replacement. It's an annual allocation, so we can continue that work in future years.
Any further discussion? No questions. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Land disposal. Oh, we've done that one already. So we now go to 13.1, which are the minutes of council committee meetings. The first one being the Southern Communities Transport Advisory Committee meeting. Recommendation being that council receive and note the minutes. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, councillor Schofield. Seconding, please. Councillor Mann. Any questions or discussion? Councillor Kemp.
Yeah, just a question on the sheds. This has been talked about over the last 6 odd years that, you know, should increase the size of the sheds to incorporate all the vehicles. I know it's in the minutes to raise it again. So is there any plans in the asset management plan over the next 10 years to fix up those sheds out the back?
Jodie, can you answer that one, please?
Thank you, through the Mayor. There's no current allocation in the 10-year capital works program, so it would need to be an amendment when we do the review in September.
Any further questions? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Disability Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee minutes. Council receiving and noting those. If someone would like to move them, thank you, councillor Schiller. And seconding, please. Thank you, councillor McKenzie. Does anybody have any questions about those minutes? In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Quinton? 4. Thank you. That's carried. Thank you. Southern Community Transport Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Recommendation is receiving them. Someone like to move that, please? Thank you, councillor Schofield. And seconding that, please. Councillor Mann, thank you very much. Any questions? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 14.1, the Fleurieu Waste Authority's draft business plan, long-term financial plan update and 25-26 budget. If somebody was happy to move those on block, I'm happy to take them on block unless you'd like them separated. Someone like to move them? Thank you. Moving on block, councillor Kemp.
Yes.
Do I have a seconder for that? Come on, people. Can someone please second it? Thank you, councillor Mann. It is frustrating here, and if I was being mean, I could just say that's not been moved by want of a seconder. It's only 10 to 7, so it's not a late night. If we can move things and get things moving, that would be great. Thank you for moving that, seconding that, councillor Mann. Is there any discussion in relation to that recommendation? Councillor Kemp, do you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Mayor. The business plan of 24 to 27 and the long-term financial plan is something that we have to approve because it keeps the Fleurieu Regional Waste Authority business going. We need to continue that. As for the contribution from our council, again, it's gone up dramatically, I think, in my opinion. Again, it's just one of those situations that, you know, we have to do it and bear the cost of it. So hopefully that there's some more benefits will come our way, especially around the part that we now have in place. And please, I'll stand corrected if it's not in place yet, that our bins can be replaced for nothing. If any ratepayer bins are damaged in any way or form, they get replaced. So that's a good move in that way. Thank you.
Any further discussion? I'll put that.
Sorry.
You have got something you want to say, Councillor?
I do, thank you, Mayor. Well, I understand that we have to vote. I don't necessarily agree with Councillor Kemp's assertion that you know, it's just a foregone conclusion. I think we need to keep all subsidiaries to account. And I think the asbestos contaminated material saga is just going to be an ongoing issue. I would prefer that we actually had some sort of way of at least planning for it or putting some money aside for it so that they don't keep these surprises all the time. But I guess we'll just have to see what happens.
Thank you, Councillor Karemba. Any further discussion? Put that to the floor. All those in favour? Sorry, all those in favour, can you put your hand up? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now go to motions on, matters of urgency. There are none. There are no questions on notice. Are there any questions without notice? Councillor Karemba.
Thank you, Mayor. My question's directed to the CEO. There was an email I think you sent out to your elected members, and for the life of me, I can't find it now because I was going to quote it verbatim, but it was in regards to that motion that was lost and the subsequent motion that came back to council. And I think there was reference to the reason that this was allowed to happen is because it's commonplace, and I'm not quoting verbatim obviously, but it was commonplace in local government and it wasn't actually based in law. So I'm just wondering if the CEO, and you can take this on notice, if you could give us examples of where this has happened, including the motion that was lost and the subsequent motion that was brought back, and if this has actually happened in Victor Harbor Council or other councils, if that's okay, please.
I can, but I've also got capacity under Regulation 21 of the meeting procedures as CEO to bring back any item for councils to revoke, to amend or reconsider. That's if you've made a decision. But if a motion's actually lost, you haven't made a decision other than not to support the recommendation.
Yep.
Because it is only a recommendation.
Yep.
So there are many examples where I have brought matters back to the council for reconsideration under Section 21. But in that instance, I didn't need to even use that clause. I was just bringing back the recommendation again for council's consideration in light of new information that was provided to you.
Yeah, I think it's just about the whole, and quite contentious about what's a carried motion, what's not carried, how it pertains with the loss and the whole thing. So if you, and you did allude to the fact that it's commonplace in local government, so I'm assuming this must have happened in other councils. So any examples?
I can give you a copy of the minutes handbook and also the procedures at meetings, basically, which you would have received as part of your induction as an elected member to council.
Sure.
Because basically if something's carried, then it's a decision of the chamber. So there's a decision that's been made, something has changed. If a recommendation's put forward and it's lost, then nothing's actually changed. Because no decision was made other than not to support the recommendation.
Okay, so to then quantify what you're saying, or just say whether it's right or wrong, it would require what, a legal judgment, or
I'm
What
not
would
sure what the
require-
legal judgment you're seeking.
the validity of what you're saying is what I'm trying to say, and as it pertains to law, like as in the Local Government Act.
Yep.
That's
So
all.
I can require some legal advice if you're unclear on it.
Sure.
I thought I was quite clear in my email back to members.
Yeah. But yeah, if you don't mind, that'd be great.
There any further, and what I suggest, if you're still unclear, councillor Krember, if you make an appointment and talk to the CEO, she may be able to explain it better to you and actually have a conversation in relation to it. There any other questions without notice? You have another question, councillor?
I do actually, and this one's actually from the Salvation Army, from the captain there, Nathan. He said that council's allowed for, I think there's some works going on that street, and they've allowed for the contractor to use a parcel of land either side of their driveway. He has expressed some concerns about potential road accidents happening, because in order for people to come out of the driveway, they literally need to be almost a metre onto the road. And he's been trying to get some sort of a answer, and I do believe that I think the answer was, well, between 4 and 8 and 4 p.m. The vehicles aren't there. But as he explained to me, a lot of people come into the church after those hours, and that's when the potential issue is. So is there somewhere we can look at maybe moving those vehicles, or just making it a little bit safer for people that use that driveway?
I'm happy to
that
take on
with
notice. Yeah,
Thank you.
it's a Gibson Avenue work. There's a number of pipes down Bartel Boulevard
Yeah.
that are being installed as they're being installed. So
Sure.
happy to take on notice and look into the matter.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No. So motions on notice. Councillor Quinton, you have a motion on notice in relation to Armstrong Road safe crossing. There is your recommendation and your motion, and there's an alternative recommendation proposed by administration. If you'd like to choose one of them and make your motion.
I'll choose option B, the administration's recommendation. I think it's got a bit more detail in it and it's a bit more relevant. But basically the motion is to look at for the upcoming budget, allowing for a better, safer crossing on Armstrong Road. I was witness to a very near accident that would have probably resulted in multiple fatalities. And so basically I just, I'm unable to ignore it, and it's my duty as an elected member to bring this option forward, or this motion forward, sorry. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's basically where the pedestrian refuge is at the moment, just converting that to a zebra crossing that has more visibility and will facilitate safer crossing for people accessing the school and the sporting clubs.
Thank you, Councillor Quinton. Can I just check with you that the recommendation that you're proposing is the one proposed by administration, that council endorse an increase to the 24-25 operating budget of $10,000 for a traffic consultant to be engaged to investigate the upgrade of the pedestrian refuge on Armstrong Road near the Encounter Bay Recreation Grounds and Ewan Terrace, and that a report be presented back to council for consideration. Is that correct? Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Burns, thank you. Do you want to speak to it?
Yes, thank you. I drive past there almost daily, and I also have almost seen a number of incidents, especially when school sports events or football is on. And I know that the island was only recently put in, I think, a year or two ago, and it's wide enough to allow wheelchair access or two people directly across. I have seen similar ones put in Melbourne, for example, where they did a what's called an S island, where you come in, you go along and then come out, so that you can allow for bikes or whatever, so you're not poking out on the road. So I'd be interested in some analysis of the traffic, but also what options are there. Obviously, people don't need more traffic lights, but some are safer refuge for people who are using it. Because if you get 1 or 2 people on it, that's all the room there is. And the amount of traffic going through, they have to wait a while before they could actually cross across when it's busy. When you can go sometimes and there's no one there. But with the sports precinct, if that gets built, it's only going to increase the number of people.
Thank you. You want to speak to that, Councillor Carembo?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I agree. This is things that we should, this is like bread and butter stuff for council. The only thing I'd say is $10,000 for a consultant to tell us there's an issue. Can we not actually use that $10,000 towards actually rectifying something and instead look at similar roads that we've done the work on with similar options or possible options, and then just bring one of those, if the administration can just bring back one option and the cost, and we don't spend $10,000 on a consultant to tell us there's a problem. We obviously acknowledge there's a problem. We've fixed problems like this before. We don't need someone externally to tell us. How about we just keep that 10,000 and just get a report back from administration with possible options and costs, and then use that 10,000 to fix that problem. That's the only thing that I would say. So maybe if Councillor Quinton might want to do an amendment to his motion to reflect that, that'd be good.
I might just ask Jody to respond to that, because it's not quite as simple as just doing it. It's while we need to get Deputy approval to do that, we can't put traffic lights up there because you have B doubles going down there and the speed of them. I know that we've looked at this a number of times. Certainly I can recall Councillor Schiller and myself walking with a group of parents and their children to school to navigating the crossings there. If it was that simple, it would have been solved, but I might let Jody expand on what you were saying, Councillor Carembo.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, we would need a qualified traffic engineer to give us a traffic impact statement for any changes, hence why we'd need to go to a consultant because we don't have those expertise in-house. And it would be not just to tell us there's a problem, but to investigate the options for solutions.
All right, just a question. So we don't have that expertise within the council? Do we have to go out to a consultant?
Yes, correct.
So we don't have that expertise?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have got engineers, but we don't have specific traffic engineers.
Okay, and there's never been any reports done about this because it's obviously been an ongoing issue. So never previously has there been anything, a report or anything to identify the issue?
Through the Mayor, since in my experience here in the last 8 years and since this crossing has been in, this is the first time I've been made aware of the concerns of the crossing.
Okay, and that's council road though, isn't it?
It is a council road and we've been working with the Department for Infrastructure and Transport around their Way to Go program with the school. And I've mentioned it in the report that they might be able to provide some contribution towards the construction.
Okay, so there is potential funding. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Councillor Kemp.
I'm not against the concept or the idea, but I'm against the $10,000 in this financial year's budget by, again, pushing out our deficit. But one of the things that we must remember that when this came up initially, there's a lot of investigation into what are the best solutions to make it easier and safer for people to cross the road. And this was the best solution at the date for the cost, what council can afford to do. So again, to put traffic lights in, yes, maybe put a zebra crossing there, but also one of the things that we must understand, and the community must understand, and drivers, that when you approach a safety refuge, that the people in the refuge have right of way. Traffic must stop and allow people through safely. So, but again, people don't understand the road rules. That's another problem. And possibly we could even put some signs up just to say give way to pedestrians, there, so that will stop, because some people do stop when people are in safe refuges. But I'm just saying we've already been through this process once already. To do it again, and I'm not quite sure what other solution come up with that's not already been explored. So I'm not supporting it.
Any further discussion? Councillor Schiller?
A few questions. Councillor Kemp's just informed us that a pedestrian has right of way. As far as I was aware, the refuge doesn't actually give the pedestrian right of way unless it is either a signalised light crossing or a wombat crossing or whatever the terminology is these days. So I firstly ask Jodie Roberts, Director of Infrastructure, if she has an understanding of that part of the policy.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, I did do some research last week to try and clarify that, and it's very blurry between who has right of way. There's some information on the state government's website because it is a road rules issue, that the pedestrians have right of way, and on the same websites it says that the vehicles have right of way. So we can seek some further clarification around that.
Okay. The next question was relating to the fact that in the proposed budget at the moment, we do have an item that relates to this particular item, which is the shared pathway, which would be both bikes and pedestrians between Investigator College and the recreation precinct. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg type situation. If we build the particular shared pathway, are we going to increase traffic to that area? And should we just be looking at maybe pushing the $10,000 consultation into next year's budget and then put the actual pedestrian crossing into the following year's budget? That's probably a pretty open-ended question, but just what relationships we might have with that shared pathway and the interactions, and that may well be the traffic consultant that can give us those answers.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, that consideration was given in writing this report. An investigation would be an operating expense, whereas when we get to detailed design, then it would be capital. So if it was going to be in next year's, it would be operating rather than capital.
Councillor Kemp.
Yes, I have a question. Thank you. If this recommendation gets up and goes ahead, I'm just wondering, would we need to multiply that out to all safe refuges that we have on our roads in City of Victor Harbor? Because if you treat one for an issue, then all the others have the same issue. So we need to look at expanding it out to maybe another 6 safety refuges that we have.
This one is specific to this safety refuge.
Yes, I understand that, but we've got so many other safety refuges as well. And should we be applying the same principles to all of them, not just one, if we're going to be a safety conscious council?
Thank you. Through the Mayor, that was highlighted in the risk part of the report, in that it is the same risk for all roads. This crossing actually is wide enough to fit a bicycle into it, but I think, as Councillor Burns alluded to, it's the number of people trying to cross at the same time. But we could definitely have a look at something that would work here. May not be able to work in other locations because you're not dealing with B-double routes and freight and things as well. So it's probably site specific for this location.
Councillor Quinton, do you want to close the debate?
Yes, please. So yeah, just to give some feedback, 100% agree with Councillor Quiremba that I would much prefer not to spend the $10,000 doing the investigation. However, I want to do this right and not do it, just have a crack at it and then have to undo it again a few years later. So I think it would be really good to have the evidence there to show that it is a safety concern and then come back with some viable options to make it safe. With regards to Councillor Kemp's questions, this particular crossing is unsafe. So I think this one is a priority and should be done. And I'm not really aware of any other pedestrian refuges that have had safety concerns around them, but I guess it's good to keep in mind. But I think this is not trying to set a precedent for everything else in Victor Harbor. And then lastly, Councillor Schiller's feedback. I do think it needs to be a priority and get it pushed through to this budget. Whilst it would be good to try and push it back if we could, as I said, I've seen a very close, accident or near accident, which would have been fatalities involved. So I don't think it's a good idea to push it back. I think it needs to be done ASAP. So I'll close it there.
Thank you. That closes the debate. I'll put the recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move to 18 point.
Sorry, I just had a clarification question if I could. Is it possible when the consultant does their assessment, they could include the assessment that was done when the existing refuge was put in?
I'm sure that Jodie will
years ago.
show them any previous assessments.
Great, thank you.
18.2, motion on notice, the Steam Ranger crossing at Grantley Avenue, and you would have seen that an email came through, and is also a paper copy has been put on your desk as well in relation to this from Steam Ranger. Councillor Quinton, you've got a motion there and also an alternative recommendation proposed by administration. Would you like to move one of them, please?
Can I just ask a question before I sort of go forward with one of them? There was a bit of a confusing part of the commentary in the first part of the officer commentary, part 2B. It says council endorsed administration working with Steam Ranger in undertaking the civil work required to convert the Grantley Avenue level crossing to an activated crossing at an estimated cost of $80,000. Then lower down in the commentary, it then says in 2022, Steam Ranger advised that the cost of a full activation could be in the order of $500,000. They're very different figures. Can I just get some clarification around which one it is and what would the actual sort of estimation be?
Thank you, through the Mayor. The $80,000 was council's civil works that they were looking to contribute. The rest of it is actually the equipment that they need, all the signalling equipment and the boom gates and things like that. So the total cost was $500,000 and they'd asked council for 80,000 of that.
So going forward, would council be looking at contributing around the 80 grand mark again?
That motion was lost on the casting vote of the Deputy Mayor. So
I guess what I want to do is basically try and have that conversation again, because that was a former council, and you know, based on that motion being lost, they put in a temporary solution, which is still there 3 years later, and I just basically just want to have that conversation and discuss it again.
Would you like to propose your motion, please?
Can I just get some advice from administration? What's the best motion to go forward with to get my the outcome I'm trying to achieve here?
They've got a recommendation that is proposed there, that the council advocate to the Department of Infrastructure and Transport and Steam Ranger to explore options for an activated crossing and potential right-hand turn reinstatement at Grantley Avenue intersection.
All right, let's go with that one then, please.
Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so I'll just firstly want to acknowledge the Steam Ranger group for their input into the motion. And I just wanted to clarify that I'm not suggesting that we go back to having no safety feature at the crossing. And as I mentioned before, the current measures were introduced as a temporary measure. And it sounds like there's some evidence that has worked, given that we've had no incidents at that crossing since instigating the measure. I don't know for how long the crossing was like that before there was an incident, and it sounded like it was a very unlucky one, and but it is, you know, there's evidence there that it's worked. So basically what I want to discuss is having a permanent solution at this intersection, and this is largely around the fact that the Steam Ranger only operates on weekends, but this junction is affected 7 days a week. So with that, that's basically what I want to have, is just the opportunity to have a discussion with elected members about it and put it forward.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you. Councillor Karemba, do you want to speak to that? No. Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp, Councillor Schiller, Councillor Burns?
Yes, it's unfortunate you weren't an elected member in the first term, Michael, because there's a lot of discussion. We even had the Steam Ranger in here and with a workshop, and we went through every angle, possibility and costings for that. And this is the solution we came up with because of the costs. Now, there's two issues here. One's about the activated signalling on the railway crossing. The other one is the actual left and right hand turns out of Highmarsh Road or into Grantley Avenue, or Grantley out, turning right into Highmarsh Road. So that is the biggest problem, and it's a safety issue. So again, the resolutions talks about an activated crossings. I think that's got, I think it's the actual road aspects of turning left and right out of Grantley and Highmarsh needs to be rectified, and that's why we put those solutions in place. There was going to be some line marking put in there to actually drive and show people much better, but even discussion of closing it down was must be a better solution overall, even though it may put a little bit more pressure on Eyre Terrace roundabout. And I noticed in the commentary here it talks about we're shifting the risk. I'm not quite sure what risk is that we're shifting from if we did close it down, and didn't realise that we're going to be looking at traffic lights in the future at Eyre Terrace roundabout. They're also in the commentary. So I think that when you look at those types of scenarios, there have been a lot of studies done that traffic lights, traffic systems actually cause more accidents than roundabouts, and roundabouts actually keeps traffic moving, traffic lights don't. So I think at the moment it's worked quite well. It doesn't look pretty, but I'm not quite sure what other solution or barriers can be put in place. I can't support the motion, to look at trying to get traffic to turn right back into Grantley off Highmarsh and vice versa from Grantley to Highmarsh turning right, because it is a dangerous situation.
Councillor Schiller?
I've got a similar opinion to Councillor Kemp in that at the moment it has proven that it's reduced the risk that we have there, and that if we take the no right hand turn away and install some kind of lights on the actual railway line, you still have that increased traffic because you have left and right traffic. At the moment we have left only traffic, and you can come out onto Highmarsh Road, and if you want to be particularly safe you can go right to the roundabout, turn around and come back and head out of the township. And although it may take a minute longer, if it's going to save people from incidents on the actual railway line, I think that is a better option. And the idea of permanency to me may be a good option too.
Thank you. And Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. I concur with the discussions we've had so far. I'm strong advocate of the activated crossing. I do have concerns about the right-hand turning access. A lot of people get impatient, and the amount of traffic coming through is only going to increase with all the housing development and people travelling down that road. So I do get concerned about, and while this is only looking at options, I think we just need to be a bit cautious about compromising and taking a cheaper option rather than looking at what is the best solution, plus also looking at the traffic impact on the other adjoining roads if that does get closed off. But I'd probably be more of a supporter of permanently closing the right-hand turning. I think it's just too dangerous. And I agree with Councillor Schiller that if you turn left and go down the roundabout, or even just turn down a side street and come back, is probably a safer option. And too many people, it's not just cars, it's cars with trailers, cars with caravans that are trying to cross there. It's crazy.
Thank you. You have a question, Councillor Karemba?
I do, because this I think is just going to be, it's only going to get worse, this issue on this road. Do we potentially look at making all the roads that lead out onto Highmarsh Road left turning only between certain times in peak traffic, so that you are forced to go up to the roundabout and come back down? Because I know you almost have to run the gauntlet a lot of the times. And like I said, we're only getting bigger and it's going to get worse. I'm not a big fan of putting in road rules, but would that be a requirement of state, or would that be local government because they're all local government roads that service that road?
The road rules are a state requirement, so we'd need state
So
government
we'd need
approval to
state.
make any of those sorts of changes.
Yeah, because I notice that what happens is coming out of some of those roads, you do find, just 1 second, you do find that the more cars that are banked up on, say, Wattle Drive, all those sort of things, people then tend to really hurry across, and that's going to be dangerous. But anyway.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Quinton, do you want to close the debate?
Noted all the commentary. I mean, even looking at an option that you can only do right turns Monday to Friday when the steam range is not operating. If you just have a simple sign there saying that, you know, would make it safe. You can still use common sense and have a safe crossing, for example. So basically all I'm trying to do is just have that discussion again to try and figure out a better way, because the temporary solution is, you know, it's been temporary for a long time, and I just feel like it's a bit of an eyesore. It's creating a lot of hazards. There's a lot, if you actually, you know, walk along that road, you'll see that many cars are doing U-turn. They're not actually going down to the traffic, to the roundabout and going around it. They're doing a U-turn at those first two streets, which is and now that you've got a busy restaurant on the left-hand side there, you've got a lot of cars parking on the street as well. So it's just snowballing and creating issues. And the longer we sit on this, the more expensive it's going to get to fix it. Like, you know, 2022, it would have been a lot cheaper to do it now. And if we wait for another 3 years to do it, it's going to get more expensive and less, you know, less achievable. So let's just have the discussion. Let's advocate to, you know, the state government to, you know, get funding to allow us to do it, and fix it up, because it is a key part of the town.
Thank you. I'll put that to the vote now. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We have another motion on notice, road and public place naming policy amendment. Councillor Schiller. Councillor Schiller, you've got your motion and you've also got an alternative recommendation proposed by administration. Which one would you like to move?
I'm happy to go with administrations, just like a query before I do. Just a guesstimate of how long you think it would take to turn this around, because I don't want it to sit there for 6 months or something like that. So anyone can give me an idea?
Jodie, perhaps you could answer that.
Thanks. Through the Mayor, I understand that there was some discussion at the last Heritage Advisory Group meeting. So it would go to the next Heritage Advisory Group meeting when they meet again.
So could we put a timeline of 2 months on the turning around so that it's locked in?
I don't know the dates of those meetings, and if there's no quorum, it might not go ahead. So,
all right.
Does it need to go to the advisory group? Or
Through the
can it just
Mayor.
come straight back to council?
Through the Mayor, I believe that the advisory group wanted to review the nomenclature list anyway, so they're already working on, and that's part of the policy. So if we update the policy and then they update the nomenclature list, we'll be doing the policy update twice.
I'll stick with the motion that administration have put up, and it would be good to allow the Heritage Advisory Committee to see the change in the policy. It'd be polite to do so. So I will continue with the recommendation as written by the administration.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to that?
Yeah. Looking at the policy standalone, if you look at the policy, if you look at the commentary that I've put in the actual motion, particularly I think it's 6.6, where it's basically stating that the names have to come from the nomenclature register. And so if there is a difference in what can be done through the application form process. That needs to be put in the policy for clarity. I think as developers come into the township, we need to allow them to contribute their own names, which may be specific to their style of development that they're placing, and we don't want to withhold their ability to be creative and innovative in what they might bring into our town. As a member of the Heritage Advisory Committee, we've already had 2 instances of names coming in which don't align with the register, and one of those came to council with the naming of 3 names, which was inferring that we were going against our policy at the time. And so we've had this another group of names come to the Heritage Advisory Committee. So just trying to tidy up and make it clear both to anyone who wants to read our policy as to what can and can't be done.
Thank you. You seconding the motion, councillor Burns?
The clarification question, if I may. Aren't we already doing this in practice? We did this with Oceania. They came.
I think we did do it with Oceania, but we were told that we were moving against the policy. Where in fact, if this is put in the policy, we won't be. Does somebody want to second this, please? Thank you, councillor Schofield. Do you want to speak to it? No. Does anybody want to speak to it? David Kemp?
Thank you. It says in the officer commentary on the first sentence, the road and public placing name policy already allows for developers to submit requests for the road. So why do we need to put it in the policy if they're already allowed to do it, unless the committee doesn't understand the policy, what they're working under? So that's what's printed in black and white here. So I don't see why we're discussing it if it's already allowed to be done.
It may be, councillor Kemp, that it's not clear, and this actually offers some clarity, because I do remember at the council meeting when we discussed the naming of Ocean Place and some of the roads that they wanted to name. I recall that it was against the policy, whereas it's not against the policy, but the policy obviously was not very clear.
Then I would make surely the process would be the procedure that once names are listed in an application to council, will go to the Heritage Advisory Committee to actually look at it and then make a recommendation to council. I mean, that's the normal process that takes place. So why do we need a policy that says what to do? Put it in the procedures.
Yeah. Well, my understanding is that it is clarifying the policy and making it clearer, but Jodie may want to also speak to that.
Thank you, through the Mayor. That officer commentary actually refers to the appendix form that allows people to submit a name that's not on the nomenclature list, but the actual policy doesn't allow it. So it's updating the policy to reflect the procedures that we currently use and the form that allows people to justify why a name that's not on the list should be considered.
It's very messy at the moment, councillor Kemp, and I think this will clarify it for everybody. Councillor Mann?
I was just wondering if we should change the name of the nomenclature list.
Yeah, I'll second that one. Thank you. Any more discussion? In that case, I'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's been passed, carried. And motions without notice, are there any? No. We now move on to confidential items. And the first recommendation is that we move into confidence because the information to be received in relation to this item is information, the disclosure of which would involve the unreasonable disclosure of information concerning tenders for the supply of goods, provision of services, or the carrying out of works. Would someone like to move that way, going into confidence? Thank you, councillor Schiller, and seconding that, please, councillor Mann. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you.